Welcome back to The Explainer. I gotta tell you, I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because, well, we finally reached it. This is the grand culmination of our 8-part math series. Over the last 7 explainers, we've been stacking up all these mathematical building blocks of AI. But today we're taking all those abstract equations and literally turning them into a physical, topological landscape. We are finally demystifying the Hessian matrix. So grab your climbing gear, because we are mapping out the literal shape of optimization. To kick things off, I want to throw out a question that is honestly a massive frustration for AI engineers everywhere. Why does your optimizer zigzag? Seriously, you've carefully set your learning rate, you're using gradient descent, but instead of making this nice smooth beeline for the lowest loss, your training curve is just bouncing around chaotically, and it takes forever to converge. Well, the hard truth is that first-order gradient descent is completely blind. It only sees the immediate slope right beneath its feet, which makes it totally oblivious to the steep canyon walls that are just up ahead.
So, here's the topographical journey we're taking today. First, the optimization blind spot. Then, enter the Hessian matrix. Third, mapping curvature and colors. After that, the optimization hiker skit. Then we'll look at scaling to modern AI. And finally, you've built the language.
All right, let's dive into part 1, the optimization blind spot.
Okay, so let's really think about this. Historically, scientists trying to navigate these complex mathematical landscapes hit a massive wall when they encountered long, narrow valleys. Think about it like driving a car through the mountains in the pitch black. The gradient, that first-order information, is really just your steering wheel and your speedometer. It gives you your current slope direction, sure, but it has absolutely zero idea what the shape of the road ahead actually looks like. It's completely blind to upcoming curves. If you're only looking at your current slope, pointing your wheels downhill, and just flooring the gas, you are literally going to fly right off a hairpin turn. And that right there is what causes all that chaotic zigzagging.
Which brings us to section 2. Enter the Hessian matrix.
So, how do we see the curve before we actually fly off the cliff? Well, centuries ago, brilliant minds like Isaac Newton and Joseph Louis Lagrange realized that first-order slope information just wasn't cutting it. They solved this by taking the derivative of the derivative. Enter the Hessian matrix. By definition, it's the square matrix of all second-order partial derivatives of a scalar-valued function. If the gradient is your speed, the Hessian is your acceleration. It tells you exactly how the slope itself is changing over time. In optimization terms, the Hessian measures the local curvature of your landscape. It essentially tells us mathematically exactly how much we can trust our gradient at any given exact moment.
And because the Hessian is built from the derivatives of partial derivatives, we get this amazing mathematical park thanks to Schwarz's theorem. Assuming your functions are continuous, the order of differentiation actually doesn't matter. So, the Hessian is always a symmetric matrix. Now, why do we even care about that? Well, in linear algebra, a symmetric matrix guarantees real eigenvalues and orthogonal eigenvectors. That inherent symmetry gives us the exact, precise mathematical properties we need to accurately analyze the 3D shape of our entire space.
Let's move on to section 3, mapping curvature and colors. All right, let's leave the pure math equations behind for just a second and actually visualize this. I want you to imagine a 3D grid, and it's bending, twisting, and morphing over our lost landscape. We're going to create a color-coded heat map right on the surface based on the Hessian's eigenvalues. Step 1 is red. This means high positive curvature. All your eigenvalues are positive. You're sitting at the bottom of a tight, steep bowl, a local minimum. You need to shrink your step size right now, otherwise you'll overshoot. Step 2 is blue. Flat curvature. The Hessian is near 0, meaning you're on the floor. You can keep walking and take big steps. And step 3 is purple. This is mixed curvature. Some eigenvalues are curving up, others are curving down. You're trapped on a saddle point, literally shaped like a horse's saddle. Gradient descent gets completely stuck here, but the Hessian, it sees the purple. It sees that downward curve, and it knows exactly how to escape.
And that sets us up perfectly for section 4, the optimization hiker's skit. Now, for the real aha moment of all this is where we prove why the Hessian isn't just some abstract math trivia. It's a massive structural performance increase. Let's look at this side by side. On the left, we've got stochastic gradient descent, our first-order method. Imagine a blindfolded hiker trapped in a really steep, narrow ravine. They feel the steep wall, they take a step directly opposite to it, and boom, they violently slam into the other wall. They're just bouncing back and forth, getting exhausted, making painfully slow progress. But on the right, that's second-order optimization using Newton's method. This hiker is not blind.
By multiplying their gradient by the inverse of the Hessian matrix, they mathematically calculate the curve, rotate their body, and smoothly glide straight down the very center of the valley floor. The bouncing completely stops, and the gliding begins.
Let's talk about how this applies today in Section 5, Scaling to Modern AI.
Now, as beautiful as that gliding hiker is, we do have to face reality here. Modern deep learning landscapes are highly non-convex, ill-conditioned nightmares. We're talking about billion-dimensional spaces that are just completely full of saddle points and twisted ravines. And the sheer scale we are dealing with today is honestly staggering. Take a model like GPT-3, for instance. With 175 billion parameters, its Hessian matrix is 175 billion by 175 billion. To compute that directly, you'd require ON-squared compute passes.
Just look at this number, 10 to the 14th power gigabytes of VRAM. That is exactly what it would take to store the full GPT-3 Hessian. Let that sink in. It is physically impossible to materialize this matrix. It completely exceeds all the RAM that exists globally. No way we can just build it.
So, you might be wondering, how on earth do we use second-order optimization if we can't even build the matrix? Well, we use some absolutely brilliant engineering workarounds. And the most important one is the Hessian vector product, or HVP. By using a really clever technique called Perlmutter's trick, we don't actually need to build the full matrix at all. We just need to know its effect on a specific vector. HVPs let us compute this in ON time, using literally just 2 passes, one forward and one backward, without ever having to materialize that giant matrix itself. It's a real game changer.
And it's exactly this workaround that makes all practical second-order deep learning possible. Let's briefly walk through how the best tools in the business actually use this concept. The Atom Optimizer, which, let's be real, you probably use every single day, actually assumes a diagonal approximation of the Hessian to scale its steps. Then you have advanced optimizers like KFAC, which approximate the curvature using Kronecker-factored blocks, letting it scale efficiently to really huge networks. And SAM, or sharpness-aware minimization, actively seeks out flat minima via perturbation. It's actively looking for those blue areas on our map with the small Hessian eigenvalues, because we know flat areas generalize much better to new, unseen data.
Finally, Section 6. You've built the language.
We've covered some truly incredible ground today, from blind hikers bouncing off walls to navigating 100 billion parameter landscapes. As we wrap up this intense mathematical journey, I really want you to take a breath and just appreciate what we've accomplished together. If you take away just one mental model today, please let it be this. The gradient is the water flowing right now. But the Hessian is the entire plumbing system. It is the shape of the bowl. By understanding curvature, you aren't just reacting to the flow of water anymore. You can predict it, you can control it, and you guide it perfectly right to the drain.
You have built the language. Think about it. Across these last 8 lessons, you've completely conquered partial derivatives, Jacobians, linear algebra, and now topology. The foundation is officially poured. The math is no longer just abstract symbols on a page. It's a physical space that you can actually navigate. The next explainers in our broader journey are going to be all about using that exact language to build and train the most powerful models in the world. You are no longer navigating in the dark. You have the map. You have the colors. So now that you can clearly see the curvature of the landscape, how will you shape it? Thank you so much for joining me on The Explainer. I'll see you in the next one.